All right, y'all, I've had my fit. I've gotten the emotions out. Let's just get into the facts now. Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about everything that we know was cut from Pokemon X and Y. Where is this all coming from? Well, basically, there is this giant leak. They're calling it the Teraleak right now. That happened where someone hacked GameFreak, got a ton of information, is leaking it out. This includes beta Pokemon, like Pokemon that were supposed to be in games and were cut. This has even included some information on things that are current or future in Pokemon, like Generation 10 and Pokemon Legends EA. Gonna go ahead and give a spoiler warning. You know this if you saw my last video, but we are not talking about any of those spoilers, anything Horizons, Gen 10. We're not talking about that. We're talking about X and Y. Keep it that way in the comments. If you talk about something without putting like an appropriate spoiler warning and, you know, enough room to where people don't get spoiled and all, I'm going to delete your comment because not everybody wants to deal with that. Let's get right into it. So, I already talked about how Pokemon X and Y was planned to have South Kalos. This was something that fans have been long speculating about, and it's even something that to this day, literally, this time last year, people were still talking about South Kalos and its potential to pop up in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. This was revealed. We can have a little more details on it. We know that it had some cities, some towns, some routes, and some dungeons. Now, what dungeons means, because some people might hear that and be like, whoa, what? Dungeons are what you would refer to as areas of the Pokemon games that are not routes or cities or towns, but they're like locations. So like some examples in Pokemon X and Y would be Sandalwood Forest or Reflection Cave, those kinds of things. You know, they're not towns, they're not routes, they're not cities, they're just like areas. Those are called dungeons. So there were supposed to be some of those there. Some of the places even included Mirage Island, which is kind of interesting because Pokemon X and Y, shortly after that came out Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, and that is the home region where there are the Mirage Islands. That's like a big part of Pokemon Emerald and was a big part of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire as well. Makes me wonder if maybe we were going to get some Hoopa tie because these Mirage Islands seem to have been tied to Hoopa and Oris. So if they would have made the connection there in X and Y, but that's just speculation. We were also supposed to get an island called Battle Island. And Battle Island, I am imagining was reworked into the Battle Resort. That's pure speculation on my end. We don't know that for sure. But that makes sense because the Battle Resort is an island. Again, that's in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So, already just a lot of cool little details on South Kalos. I've already expressed that I'm very upset that this didn't happen. But there's way more. There are tons of features, plot stuff. We're going to get into it all today. This is going to be great. So, yeah, we're just beginning to cook. Y'all have no idea. Okay, so let's talk about the Pokemon next. People care about that, right? I'm not going to show the Pokemon on screen because Nintendo is currently going around and, getting the people that are showing their stuff. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to tell you about them. We've seen some designs for, Florges and Floette and Flabebe, some beta designs for them, what they were supposed to look like. We've seen scrapped designs for, or concepts rather, for Mega Charizard, Mega Venusaur, Mega Blastoise, Mega Mewtwo. We've seen a Flamingo Pokemon that very likely was a scrapped Spritzee, and a few others, but even some Pokemon that just didn't make it into the game. Like there's a Cassowary Pokemon that talks about how it eats fire. That there's nothing like that in Kalos. That was just completely scrapped. So things like that are really cool. There's like this little water bug Pokemon that I imagine probably was later on reworked into Wimpod and Golisopod, but maybe not. There's a little fish Pokemon that's kind of based off of a boat rudder. All kinds of things. I mean, it really is crazy. I think I just covered them all. Oh, no, how could I forget? There's a little Peanut. There was a little Peanut, and he evolved into a little Dino Peanut. And maybe that sounds cool to you. Maybe it doesn't. But if it doesn't, I promise you it is. It's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. So, there's that. There was also a fourth mythical Pokemon, Electric Steel type, that was supposed to be in the game. This was also scrapped. I mentioned this yesterday or the other day on my video, but Mega Jinx was also a thing that was scrapped. And also there's some interesting stuff like they changed the cinematic of this isn't like new Pokemon related, but just kind of old Pokemon featured. The cinematic of the old war, the old Kalos war, showed Giratina and Heatran fighting in it, which is kind of wild to see Satan, jumping into this match. But yeah, that was a thing that happened. We also have a lot of some story, I guess, stuff, if you want to call it that. So first off, the ultimate weapon was originally planned to be a virus. We don't know if this was related to Pokeross or if this was just some other kind of virus. Like, we're told Deoxys is a virus. There's some good theories out there about Deoxys being related to Pokeross. I don't know if it would have tied into all that or been a whole nother thing separately, but either way, the ultimate weapon seemed to be some kind of virus or vessel, which is pretty metal. Then also there was supposed to be a battle where you would battle someone that looked like you, and they would use your team, which is very interesting. Honestly, don't know what to do with that, but that's very interesting. We also have your rival in the games. This is kind of interesting because one of the biggest critiques I've always seen of Pokemon X and Y is that the side characters, you have these like group of friends you're traveling with, Serena or Callum, depending on which gender you're playing as, Tierno, Shauna, and Trevor. People kind of critique them because they can be a little boring. They're not that challenging, all that. But we learned that your rival was originally supposed to be a Pokemon that had turned into a human. So, if you wanted your rival to be more interesting, if you thought the Kalos characters were not interesting, well, that definitely would have made them interesting, if you ask me. Then we also have the Pokemon Village, which in X and Y, as we know it, happens to just kind of be this. I've always thought it was weird, right? Like, it's called Pokemon Village. It's not really a village, though. There's no towns. There's some people there. It's whatever. You have to go there to, like, talk to Wolfric to get him to go to his gym so that you can go and challenge him at his gym. But according to these leaks, originally this Pokemon Village was supposed to be an area where you would encounter a lot of different characters, including characters that you've encountered on your journey, like gym leaders and stuff, but they were all going to have, like, a disgusted face, like, or something. I'm imagining. I don't think we have pictures of the face. I'm just imagining that's like, and you would talk to these, and turns out these are not actually people. These are Pokemon. These are Ditto that were disguised as humans. So it's like literally a village. It looks like a village because it's a bunch of people, but it's a Pokemon village because those aren't people. Those are Ditto, which is really neat. And it raises a lot of interesting questions, right? Because there are some theories about Ditto being like a failed Mew clone, like an early Mewtwo. And interestingly enough, this village, Pokemon Village, is right there where there is a cave where you find Mewtwo. So kind of interesting that where you find the Mew clone, it's a bunch of villages of Pokemon that people think might be Mew clones, failed Mew clones. So I don't know, that adds credit to that theory, in my opinion. I guess it doesn't really, because it is scrapped. It's not in the final game. But it does make me think that that's kind of Game Freak's intention behind Ditto. But anywho, we also have plenty, and I mean plenty, of features that were scrapped. So there's some stuff in X and Y that kind of feels random, right? Like Sky Battles felt really random. Well, this kind of makes more sense of this. Soaring was supposed to be a thing in X and Y. We did get Soaring in Oris. You can fly on Megalodios or Megalodios. Interestingly enough, Megalodios and Megalodios are in X and Y. Like, you can use Latios and Latios. You can use Megalodios and Megalodios. You never can get their Megastone, if I remember correctly. But if you were to trade it from Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you could access them and, use them in battle, which was kind of weird because they were the only Pokemon like that for Morse. Like, you couldn't use Mega Sceptile, Mega Glalie, Mega Steelix, none of that, only Megalodios and Megalodios. So that kind of makes me wonder if maybe you were to fly on them originally too. And that was the whole purpose of Sky Battles. You were even supposed to find the Kanto birds, Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos, using this method. You were supposed to soar up in the air and go around and try to find Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres up there. I assume you were supposed to only battle them with Pokemon eligible for Sky Battles, which would have been a nice twist on it. I like the idea of Pokemon kind of forcing you to do realistic things, right? If you're out in the middle of the ocean, don't throw your Torkoal out of the Pokeball. He's going to die. You want to throw out a Luminion or something to battle. I really like that idea. I'd be fine if Pokemon implemented it instead of the little rafts they do in Scarlet and Violet. But either way, I think it's cool. Some more features that were cut were There were supposed to be battles where every few turns the terrain would change. This makes sense. Terrain was a gimmick that was introduced in X and Y, a gimmick, soft gimmick, right? Like, it's not like Mega Evolution, but it is a gimmick. There was supposed to be a battle, 6-on-6 battles, where the terrain would change every so often. I really like that idea. It kind of reminds me of, in the anime, how, like, there's been league matches where they'll randomize what field the match takes place on, and they'll even say, oh, once 3 Pokemon have fainted, we're going to change and move to a different type of field. And I like that this was kind of that, right? Another feature was going to be fashion battles. So I don't know, by the way, if these are like the official terms that were used for these, or if these are just how people are describing them. So, you know, a little wiggle room for me there, please. But fashion battles were going to be where you dressed your Pokemon up and then you battled them. Pretty simple. You know, it's not something, I'll be honest, I've never cared a ton for, like, Pokemon customization. So this is not personally something that I'm like, we were robbed. But I definitely think it's something that a lot of fans are going to feel like we were robbed of, because I know that that's something that people have been asking for a very long time. We also have gyms. Gyms were supposed to be a thing. You were supposed to be able to build your own gym and then, like, through online, basically be able to challenge each other's gyms, become gym trainers in each other's gyms, all that fun stuff. This was all reworked into Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you know, and it could have, honestly, maybe it wasn't even planned for X and Y, and it was just kind of early stuff in X and Y that they were building in preparation for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I don't know. That's speculation on my end, but it's also very possible that they could have went in both X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire so that the two games could kind of have some more interaction between each other, right? Rather than what ended up happening was basically once Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out, you abandon X and Y for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire because it has the Megas and X and Y doesn't get access to those. It has these new features like the gyms and stuff. So kind of sad to see that that's what happened when they might have been intending initially for there to be a kind of crossover between these two, or a more cohesive crossover between these two. We do also have, on that note, some, like, evidence that there was supposed to be, like, direct, like, co-op modes between Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and X and Y, which is interesting. Another feature is dive. Dive was supposed to be in the game. You were supposed to be able to dive in X and Y, but this ended up not happening. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire is a hoeing game, so it does have dive, so maybe, again, it was like early building for that. I don't know. The games right before X and Y, Black 2 and White 2 and Black and White, these games did feature dive. So maybe this is something that GameFreak at one point wanted to be a staple of Pokemon. We can only speculate, but that's the speculation I'm sticking with. So some more multiplayer features were that there were supposed to be circuses, and they're kind of described as being Pokemon's next contest. Like, this would be the next thing after contest. And basically here you would put on circuses with your Pokemon, and this would include mini games that you could create with your Pokemon. There's got to be limitations on this. Like, I imagine that's a little less impressive than it sounds, but that is really cool and would have been nice to see, you know, maybe. And the nice thing is, this stuff, maybe it'll pop up one day in an X and Y remake, like a remake, not a Legends game, or maybe some of it could pop up in Legends EA. That's always possible. I'm not expecting it to. I feel like, you know, it's scrapped, you know. I hope I'm wrong, but that's kind of how I feel. There is also supposed to be a hatching facility. You could take your Pokemon eggs here, and they'd hatch them for you. This is kind of similar to one of the Pokepelago Islands in Pokemon Sun and Moon, so that feature was clearly reworked into that. Another feature was Rhyhorn Racing. Rhyhorn Racing is teased all throughout the game, and you can even, like, go to a Rhyhorn Racing track on that route that's in between Sandalwood City and the Pokemon League. You can see that there's, like, a racetrack there, and it's supposed to be a Rhyhorn Racing track. You were supposed to be able to race Rhyhorn. They were even going to let you do it online, like Mario Kart. I have no words. That's just objectively really cool, right? But nope, it was scrapped. Some other minor things were that there was supposed to be an option to, when you nicknamed a Pokemon you just caught, you could take a commemorative photo with it. You could get a champion's room that you could decorate after you had become the champion. There was even like a little side plot where like apparently like a year after you would become champion, you'd get like a little message, kind of like you get a message on your birthday, and like your badges were apparently stolen, and you would have to like find this guy who stole your badges, get your badges back, which I love that idea so much. It's just genius to me. AR battles were supposed to be a thing, so like where I could hold out my 3DS and think about the Dream Radar where they were playing around with AR, and you know, obviously now we have Pokemon Go playing around with it, but where I could hold out my 3DS and like I could see my Bulbasaur right here on my 3DS screen. It would be like in this room and I'd be battling someone in this room. That is so cool. That is so cool. Weather vane Pokemon were supposed to be a thing, so like you would, depending on where you were in the Kalos region, the wind would be blowing in a different direction, and depending on which direction it's blowing, you would get a different encounter, which that's an easy way to like rework how you get different color Flabébé. Maybe even that could have been how you got different like pattern Vivian. That would have been kind of cool. Like, yeah, it's to your land when you evolve your Spupa, but if you do it based off the winds, you have like a 1% chance of getting a this form Vivian here and a that form Vivian there. That would have been really neat. Again, obviously, they did not do that. But yeah, so that about covers it. That's everything in Pokemon X and Y that were scrapped. I've already done a whole video where I talked about how I felt like these games were not given a chance. I won't say it a second time. You can check that video out if you haven't. But I wanted to do a video where I just go over everything and list everything these games weren't, you know, we're supposed to have but did not have. And, you know, you can tell me if you thought they were robbed, because they were. And if you don't think so, then you're objectively wrong. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and until next time, I will see all of you later.